Hi, welcome back to the channel. As you can see again by the title, we're talking about the real story of Thanksgiving, which is to come this week. And I just wanted to get on here and share with you some truths that we probably didn't learn in school, which is written down in history, but they just chose not to tell us. They painted a picture of things that were only partly true and very scantly true. So we want to look at the real story behind Thanksgiving. But before we get started, as usual, I'm going to ask, if you're new here, please subscribe and hit the post notification bell so you'll know when I upload new videos. And please smash the like button so that this video through the algorithm can be seen by others. I sure would appreciate that. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to be reading information, and the Native Americans are referred to as Indians. I want everyone to know I don't mean any disrespect. I know they're native. I know they're natives. I know that they're Native Americans. They were here first, and I do not want to disrespect them by calling them Indians because somebody else chose to call them Indians. But because of the text, I will be saying Indians, but I just want you to know, as a full disclosure, that I respect and understand them to be Native Americans, okay? All right. So the third, is it the third or the fourth Thursday? Probably the fourth Thursday of last Thursday of every November, okay? This day is celebrated by everyone in the United States and in different parts of the world. I'm going to put a link to a video below that talks about the religious side of Thanksgiving, which was celebrated years by other groups of people worshiping their deity before this so-called holiday here in this country with pilgrims. Okay? And in 1620, as the story goes, a small band of pilgrims of Plymouth Colony braved the perilous North Atlantic in quest of religious freedom. Instead of landing in spring and further south as planned, they landed in the winter months of November and faced a harsh winter with very meager supplies. Those meager supplies dwindled rapidly, leaving only 55 of the 102 to survive until spring. Because the summer was blessed with sunshine and rain, the autumn harvest was bountiful. The Pilgrim colony, appropriately grateful, established a 3-day feast of Thanksgiving. Today, being taught this understanding of Thanksgiving, nearly all Americans celebrate this holiday, believing it to be pure and holy, a day thought to be closer to really pleasing and praising God and with Thanksgiving than any other day. However, we have to ask the question, is it really? Well, the story began in 1614 when a band of English explorers sailed home to England with a ship full of Pawtucket Indians bound for slavery. Remember the date. They left behind smallpox, which virtually wiped out those who had escaped. So those who had escaped their capture to be put into slavery, taken to England, they were left with smallpox. By the time the Pilgrims arrived in Massachusetts Bay, they found only one living Pawtucket Indian, a man named Squanto. I know you know the story of Squanto, who had survived slavery in England. He had been taken from here to England, taught the English language and their customs. And he taught them how to grow corn and to fish and to negotiate a peace treaty between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag Nation. At the end of their first year, the Pilgrims held a great feast honoring Squanto and the Wampanoags. But as word spread in England about the paradise to be found in the New World, religious zealots called Puritans began arriving by the boatload. Finding no fences around the land, they considered it to be public domain. Joined by other British settlers, they seized the land, capturing strong young natives for slaves and killing the rest. So when you say seize the land, they stole the land, capturing people for slaves. But the Pequot Nation had not agreed to the peace treaty Squanto had negotiated, and they fought back. The Pequot War was one of the bloodiest Indian wars ever fought. Now, in 1637, near present day, this Groton, Connecticut, over 700 men, women, and children of the Pequot tribe had gathered for their annual Green Corn Festival, which is our Thanksgiving celebration. In the pre-dawn hours, the sleeping Indians were surrounded by English and Dutch mercenaries, who ordered them to come outside. Remember, this is pre-dawn raid. Those who came out were shot or clubbed to death, while the terrified women and children were huddled inside the long house and were burned alive. The next day, the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony declared a day of Thanksgiving because 700 unarmed men, women, and children had been murdered. That was a day of Thanksgiving. That was a day to their God that they were giving thanks for. I want that, as someone would say, sizzle in your spirit. Cheered by their victory, the brave colonists and their Indian allies, there's always some sellouts in every group of people, okay? Attacked village after village. Women and children over 14 were sold into slavery, while the rest were murdered. Boats loaded with as many as 500 slaves regularly left the ports of New England. Bounties were paid for Indian scalps to encourage as many deaths as possible. And I know I'm going to tell you right now, those Western movies that I grew up watching always had this reverse. It was always the port settlers were going to be scalped by those savages. And I'm saying that word loosely because that's what they were called by those people. But this is what was happening to the Native Americans, the Indians. Following an especially successful raid against the Pequot in what is now Stamford, Connecticut, the churches announced a second day of Thanksgiving to celebrate victory over the heathen savages. So this is a word that is used a lot about people that are being conquered, that they're the savages, they're the brutes, they're the ignorant heathens. But it's the perpetrators to me that can have these titles as savages and brutes and heathen. During the feasting, the hacked off heads of natives were kicked across the streets like soccer balls. Even the friendly Wampanoag did not escape the madness. Now, these were the people of Squanto's people that were friendly with them, and they were also included in this foolishness. Well, their chief was beheaded and his head impaled on a pole in Plymouth. You know that town? Plymouth, Massachusetts, where it remained on display. Are you ready for this? 24 years as a testament and a monument of what they were thankful for. The killings became more and more frenzied, with days of thankful feasts being held after each successful massacre. You heard me right. Days of feasting and celebrating after massacre, they would have these days of Thanksgiving, celebrating their victory. George Washington finally suggested that only one day of Thanksgiving per year be set aside instead of celebrating each and every massacre. You heard me right. You heard me right. Listen, this is going too far. The celebrations were happening so regular. He said, listen, let's just set aside one day. One day rather than every day that you're having these celebrations because you're winning these. I can't even call them wars because they're not really, but I guess they are. A war on the people. Later, Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving Day to be a legal national holiday during the Civil War. On the same day, he ordered troops to march against the starving Sioux in Minnesota. This is the revision of history I'm sure they're going to rewrite. Slavery didn't happen. Nothing happened to the Indians. I mean, this is the kind of stuff they're going to want to rewrite. And anything that's the truth, they say is critical race theory, and they don't like it. And they say it's terrible and we can't subject our children to it. But this series is called Truth Sets You Free. This story doesn't have the same quite fuzzy feeling associated with the ones we've been told about Indians and Pilgrims, all sitting together, that one big feast, which maybe happened one time. But we need to learn our true history so it won't be repeated. Other groups, people say bad stuff happened to them and they don't want it repeated. They don't want you not to understand it because they don't want it repeated. These people don't want it repeated either. We don't want our history to be repeated either. So next Thanksgiving or this Thanksgiving, whenever it comes, when you see this video and you gather together with your loved ones for a gluttonous feast and you thank God for your blessings, I want you to think about those people. All they wanted was their family and their lives to be raised in peace. They wanted to look to a day to thank their Creator for all their blessings, but they couldn't because they were killed. Now, I had to learn this truth. I'm sharing it with you. Go research. I'm going to put a video down below that gives you more history about the spiritual side of Thanksgiving, that it was a spiritual thing. They were really in other countries before this happened here. They were worshiping their false gods, a day of Thanksgiving. But you know what? Just know that God has given us a day of rest every seventh day Sabbath to give him praise, honor, and glory every week, every seventh day. And if you so choose to take this time to be with your family, I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying not to be with your family, but don't let it be a celebration. Don't let it be the same reason that we have done this year after year at the expense of our brothers and sisters. No one wants to celebrate the enslavement of my people or the Holocaust or anything like that. You don't want a day of celebrating that happened to people. Then why are we going to have a day of celebrating this? Because this is the truth of what happened to the people here in this country. And so when you do get together with your family and friends, please understand the truth of what's happening today. And don't just let it be a gluttonous time and giving thanks for the food. But think about what happened on this day hundreds of years ago and why it affects the people today, why it's a day of sadness for the Native Americans and not a day of celebrating. Because the Wampanoag Indians in Massachusetts are still here. They're not a tribe today, but they're still here. And from what I understand, a lot of them look like me. So, for whatever this was worth, I hope and pray that you will be thankful to the Most High Yah, but you'll do it in a way that is pleasing to Him and honoring to others. All right? I hope this helped you in some way. Please be diligent, research things. Don't just take what we've been told for years. Everything we've been told hasn't been the truth, and it hasn't been the whole truth. Okay? So may the grace and peace of God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all until we meet again in the next video. Shalom.